Good morning, 7th grade. This is our first virtual class. So I'm just gonna kind of get you up to speed. I have both, I'm doing one video for both the boys and the girls because you are learning the exact same thing. But this is just a message to the 7th grade girls. Because I teach you history as well. I'm not going to be doing videos on history. You guys have your interactive notebooks. You can work on those. You can finish up what you, the lesson that you've been working on in school. And then what I will do is I have the next lesson. It's just finishing up to getting printed. And then what I could do is drop that off at your house. So let me know when you're done with that lesson, and then I can bring you the next lesson to work on, okay? And I think what we'll do is you'll just do your notebook, and then at the end of it all, I'll check all of it, and then that's how we'll base your grade, okay? And then as far as science, you'll watch the daily videos, just like I gave you in the previous instructions, the video with the instructions previously, and you will do your daily assignments after you watch the video. Okay, so let's get straight to it. We are learning about the necessities of life. We talked about this in class. This is kind of where we left off, okay? So the necessities of life. And we said that there are 4 necessities. We said that water, oxygen, food, and a place to live. We discussed water extensively in class. We discussed oxygen. I believe we did a place to live as well. I'm not sure. Somebody let me know. Just send me a quick email. Let me know if we did or not. If not, I'll do a video on that after we complete the topic of food. Okay, so this is the necessity of life is food. I did start this with the 7th grade boys. I did not with the 7th grade girls, but this will be a good review for you 7th grade boys to watch this video, get this in. You may not have to write notes on this, but still you do need to complete the assignment for this video, okay? So pay close attention and answer the questions at the end of this, okay? So the necessity of life, the ones that we're gonna do today and for the next week or so is food, okay? Food is a very important necessity for life, okay? And the reason for that, there are 2 reasons why food is important. The first is that, what do we know about food? Is that food, so the 2 reasons why food is important is 1, food gets converted into energy, right? And we've talked about that a lot when we were talking about characteristics of life and living things making energy, right? Making and utilizing energy. Very, very, very important for cells to be able to function. So we know that food is going to be converted into energy. And the second thing is that food is used to build our cells. Okay, so when we're going to talk about that extensively, the nutrients in the food is going to be broken down, and then it's going to be used to build up our cells, right? To make the organelles, to make the cells in order for our cells to be able to function. Just make it a little less light in here. Okay, and so that is why food is important. Now we talked about, I think we talked about, you know what, I'm going to review it anyway, whether we spoke about it or not, because I can't remember. So now that we know why they're important, and by the way, if you need to, you can pause the video and you can go back, or you can slow things down if you're not able to get those notes down as soon as I am writing it and erasing it, okay? So we know that there are different ways that organisms can get their food, right? So we have 3 different categories of organisms. We have producers, we have consumers, and we have decomposers. Now, the producers are, and I'm going to write this down. I would like it to be vocabulary words, so if you want, you can also put this on your index cards, and that way when we have our quizzes, this will be another vocab word that you can just include. Okay, so producers are organisms that make their food. They make their own food. Their own food through a process called, and you should know this, photosynthesis. It's actually funny because 6th grade is also learning about photosynthesis. You guys, I'm not going to teach it to you as in depth as I will with 6th grade. You should be familiar with it. I hope you've learned it in the past. If not, shoot me an email and let me know. But they are also, so if you have siblings in 6th grade, you guys might for a little bit be on the same page. All right, so we know that producers are organisms that make their own food through this process called photosynthesis, and we're going to discuss that in just a little bit. Then we have consumers. Consumers are organisms that eat other organisms. So organisms that eat other organisms, those are consumers, okay? They don't make their own food. They eat other organisms, other living things in order to get the food from them. Those are consumers. And decomposers are organisms that get their food by breaking down the nutrients of dead organisms. Now, you would say, well, wouldn't we be considered a decomposer too? Because we break down the nutrients of dead organisms as well. We don't eat living organisms. And you would be correct. However, the difference between a decomposer and a consumer, we're going to talk about as we go into detail about them, okay? And why decomposers is a separate category, and what are the examples of different decomposers that exist in this world. Okay, so right now I'm going to erase consumers and decomposers. Again, if this is too fast, then you can just pause and write down as you're going. So, whoa! All right, I actually put up some paintings so we can get some color. It was so bare. So I put up some colors so we can have a little bit of life in this video. All right, so if they fall down again, it might be a sign. Okay, so producers. Let's talk about producers. So producers, we know, are organisms that make their own food. And what kind of organisms make their own food? Those are plants. Plants, there are some bacteria that do have the ability to do photosynthesis. It's not a very common thing. Most bacteria are not producers, but there are. So I'm just stating it so that you know that it's not just plants, but for most of it, for this class in particular, what you need to know is that it is plants primarily that do photosynthesis that are going to be considered the producers, okay? And so plants, they are going to be producers. And they're also, producers are also known as autotrophs. Autotrophs are organisms that make their own food, okay? Pretty much the same thing. Producers, autotrophs would be the same thing, okay? And organisms that don't make their own food are considered heterotrophs, okay? And we're going to get to that when we talk about consumers and decomposers, okay? So those two categories are heterotrophs, producers are autotrophs, okay? And so we know that these plants, which are known as autotrophs, they produce their own food, and they produce their own food through this process called photosynthesis. So what exactly is photosynthesis? So remember when we talked about cellular respiration? Let's kind of rewind a little bit and review that. Cellular respiration is the process that living things are going to do to make energy, ATP, adenosine triphosphate, energy important for cells to do work, right? Cells cannot function or do any type of work without some sort of energy. So how are they going to make that energy? They're going to take the food that they eat and they're going to convert it into energy, ATP, right? This is stuff we already learned. Now, the difference between photosynthesis and cellular respiration is, as we talk about photosynthesis, you're going to see what the big difference is. But they kind of work together, interestingly, right? There's kind of a similarity between them, and we've spoken about this briefly in some of our actual classes, right? They work hand in hand, because what we'll notice is the ingredients of one seems like it's the product of the other, and the product of one seems like it's the ingredients of the other. So they're kind of like the same, but almost backwards, right? So let's just review what photosynthesis is. So I'm sure you've learned in the past, photosynthesis is the process where plants will take three ingredients, right? The three ingredients that they take, one is water, two is sunlight, which we know are photons. That's why it's called photosynthesis, right? They take the photons and then they synthesize it, they build something with it, right? What are they building? They're building food. And then the third thing is carbon dioxide. And we know scientifically, water, we're going to state as H2O. Then we know sunlight will be our photons, and carbon dioxide is CO2. And so we have these three ingredients. Now we know that when we have a chemical reaction, right, we always can write that in a chemical equation. All right, so we know that there are reactants and products. Reactants are your ingredients, products are the things that are being produced, right? What the ingredients are being converted into. So anytime we have a chemical reaction, we have a chemical equation. So let's write up the chemical equation for our for photosynthesis. The chemical equation, and by the way, when we're talking about the chemical equation, we know reactants or ingredients, reactants, I'd like you to use that term as opposed to ingredients, right? But reactants always go to the left side, the products always are on the right side, and what separates the two is an arrow, and the arrow means converts to, right? That's what it doesn't mean equal to, it means converts to. So we have H2O plus CO2, or whatever, we have photons here, so let's just write that. It really actually doesn't really matter what the order is, right? On that side of the equation. And then we have CO2, and this is going to convert into, so we know that the plants are using these ingredients to make food. It's not making energy, it's making food. The food then will become energy later on. We're going to talk about that, and I'm going to show the difference between the two different equations and how they do work hand in hand, how they work together. But right now, let's just get the equation down. So we have water, we have photons, and we have carbon dioxide. And what happens is that these three ingredients are going to convert into glucose, and you all know the chemical formula for glucose, which is C6H12O6. So we have glucose plus oxygen, right? O2, glucose plus oxygen. So these will be our reactants. These will be our products. Reactants are always on the left. Products is always on the right. So reactants and products. And then this is the conversion. Convert to. Okay? And so this is what plants do. They're going to bring in water through their roots. They're going to take in photons from the sun, and they're going to release carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. What am I talking about? Not release carbon dioxide. They're going to release oxygen, but we're not there yet. We release carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. I caught myself. Thank God, because usually in class you would catch me. But yes, they absorb the carbon dioxide into the plant itself, and then they take these three ingredients, these three reactants, and then they're going to convert it into a form of sugar, glucose, right? There are other sugars as well, but glucose is primarily what we're going to be talking about, and oxygen, which they're going to release into the atmosphere. Okay, so this is where I'm going to end today. Each video will be approximately 15 minutes because that's like the max that I could really upload. Otherwise, I'd make them a little bit longer, but let's just stick with this here today, and then tomorrow we will continue on with our with photosynthesis and showing how that relates to cellular respiration. Have a good day.